the voter register and result sheets, further enhancing the transparency of the process. Security. Security personnel were present throughout the day and conducted themselves professionally. There were short queues outside most polling stations, and these remained generally peaceful and orderly. However, the mission noted some insecurity incidents reported by the Ghana Police Service and commenced their timely interventions. Additionally, some election officials in the Bono region were arrested for various electoral offenses. The mission notes with concern the reported shooting incident, which claimed the life of one citizen and encourages the security agencies to continue to put in place measures to avert such incidents during such an important national process. The African Union Election Observation Mission acknowledges the level of professionalism exhibited by the security personnel deployed to the polling stations visited. No armed security was seen at the polling stations, and the police were commended for their swift response when they were called in to restore order. Closing of the polls. There were no queues at most polling stations at the time of closing. However, voters who were on the queue at some of the stations were allowed to vote. Closing and counting took place in a peaceful, open, and transparent atmosphere in the presence of voters, observers, party candidates, agents, and media. Polling staff were generally competent in carrying out their duties and demonstrated a sense of commitment to the process. Commendable practices. Establishing a maximum threshold of 749 voters per polling station, ensuring the efficiency of the election administration, ensuring adequate electoral materials, and limiting the possibility of long queues. Allowing political party agents to put their own seal on ballot boxes to secure the vote. Inclusive vote counting processes conducted transparently at polling stations, fostering public trust in the electoral process. Access to the voter register for party agents at each polling station, which enabled verification of the voters by the political party agents. Reduction of candidate nomination fees for women and persons with disabilities, promoting greater inclusivity and candidate participation. Regular press conference by the Ghana Police Service on security matters to enhancing public awareness of polling day security. The active involvement of the Anti-Corruption Commission in policing corrupt practices such as vote buying, which can corrupt the electoral process. Publishing election petitioning and litigation procedures to enhance understanding and use by election stakeholders in the event of election disputes. Granting of media access to tallying centers and allowing them to publish declared results to limit information gaps in the electoral process. Use of multiple options to verify voters using the BVDs, which limits chances of registered voters being turned away. Conclusion and recommendations. Conclusion. Voting which accommodates persons who will be on official duty on election day to exercise their right to vote. The African Union Mission observed special voting in Greater Accra on 2 December 2024, and in Eastern region on 5 December 2024, where polling was conducted in a largely compliant, peaceful, and orderly manner. There was consistency between how polling was conducted for special voting and on election day. Only the counting and tabulation process that was done on 7 December. The election day observation. On election day, the African Union Election Observation Mission deployed 60 short-term observers to 14 of the 16 regions across Ghana. They observed opening and closing procedures in 13 regions and visited a total of 442 polling units to observe voting. In most polling stations, the atmosphere was generally calm and peaceful. Opening of polling. The mission noted that all the polling stations visited opened on time, apart from 2 stations, one in the Eastern region and another in Oti, which opened late due to the late arrival of materials and polling staff and the failure of the BVDs. The voting process. The mission noted that the EC maintained a maximum threshold of 749 voters per polling station, improving efficiency in voter management and counting procedures. Voting proceeded uninterrupted throughout the day at the polling stations observed. However, report emerged of voting being interrupted in some areas of Greater Accra due to heavy rainfalls, but this did not affect the election process. Election materials. Despite the isolated case of delay in opening witnessed, election materials were available in sufficient quantities throughout the day, and the voter verification devices also performed as intended at the stations observed by the African Union Election Observation Mission. Polling stations. While all polling units were generally accessible to voters, only 6% of the stations observed were located on uneven ground where persons with disabilities would face challenges. The secrecy of the vote was guaranteed by the appropriate layout of all polling stations. At most of the polling stations visited, images of candidates and political parties were posted very close to the polling stations, despite the requirement of having no less than 100 meters within the polling stations. Election personnel and polling procedures. The mission noted that there was general uniformity in implementing prescribed procedures by polling officials who exhibited a high level of professionalism. A large percentage of polling personnel were women, and this is commendable. The voters needing assistance in 80% of the polling stations visited were provided necessary assistance by a person of their choice or a polling officer. And candidate nominations. The EC conducted the candidate nomination exercise between 9 and 13 September 2024. On the 39 candidates who indicated their intention to contest the 2024 presidential election, only 13 candidates made it to the final list for the presidential election, 9 from political parties, and 4 as independent candidates. And for the parliamentary elections, 801 candidates composed of 111 independent candidates and 690 from political parties were nominated to contest for the 2,276 seats. Election campaign regulations and finance framework in intercepting the said ballots, which could have tainted the integrity of the process. The mission commends the vigilance of voters, citizen observers, and political party and candidates agents in the observation and monitoring of the polling process, counting of ballots, and tallying processes. On voter registration, this registration was conducted for 21 days between 7 May and 27 May 2024. In addition to the standard registration sites at the district offices, the EC deployed mobile teams to register voters in difficult to access areas. A total of 1,746,518 new voters were registered, out of which 708,280 are first-time voters aged between 18 and 21 years. A final register of 18,774,159 voters was published by the Electoral Commission, of which 18,640,811 voters with biometric data, 131,478 special voters, and 1,870 voters without biometric data. All presidential candidates and political parties received a copy of the final register, further enhancing transparency and access to information in the process. The Electoral Commission communicated timelessly on the printing and reprinting of ballot papers, which contributed to the postponing of special voting to 5 December 2024 in the Eastern and Central regions, respectively. It is, however, regrettable that there were reports of ballot papers that were alleged to be distributed outside the formal polling processes. However, the people of Ghana are committed and manage all public elections and referenda in the country. The EC implemented all activities in its electoral calendar as scheduled, though there were some delays in some of the processes. Notably, the mission acknowledged the EC's efforts to enhance transparency in the process by having regular consultations with the civil society and invited the media to participate in one of the inter-party advisory committee meetings. The AU mission commends